Hey everyone, Brian Zayn with my somewhat belated review of Payback 2023. Labor Day weekend was a busy time for a lot of us folks, me included. You know, after Friday night when I did commentary for Prestige, Roseland 6 in Portland, I tuned out of all the wrestling that took place that weekend. I missed Payback, I missed All Out, and so I'm going to do my best this week to try and catch up on the shows I missed and give you those reviews. So, how will WWE do on a holiday weekend that's already chock full of wrestling, and two of their top stars in Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes aren't wrestling tonight? Let's find out. Show took place in Pittsburgh at the PPG Paints Arena. Opening matchup, a steel cage match as Becky Lynch takes on Trish Stratus. I gotta admit, ever since Becky turned babyface again, I kinda miss goats on a coat. Trish telling the guy in the front row to go fuck himself, which is hilarious. We see NXT Women's Champion Tiffany Stratton watching in the crowd. Becky in control for the first couple of minutes. Trish pulling her off the top rope, throwing her into the cage to take over, pulling back Becky's face and saying cheese. Becky starts coming back. She goes for a line. We get the Matrix dodge by Trish, but Becky gets the drop on her. A lot of face-in walling here. Trish gets a huge lump on her forehead as a result of all this physicality. Trish hits the Widow's Peak. Shout out to Victoria. Trish with a twist of fate and homage for an homage. Stratisfaction and a kick out. They fight on the cage wall on the rope. Becky teasing a slam. Trish comes back, hits a top rope bulldog. Now they're on top of the cage. Trish's legs go through the top and she hangs backwards, sort of a tree of woe spot. Big ass superplex by Becky. At the door, out comes Zoe Stark trying to pull her mentor Trish out of the ring. We get a tug of war. Becky kind of stupidly goes to the very door that Zoe is guarding, so we get the expected result. Zoe is now in the ring. Becky closing the cage door shut like a badass. Manhandle slam to Stark. A top rope version to Trish, and we get the win for Becky. Then after the match, Trish gets mad at Stark, who stands up for herself and takes Trish out as well. I give this 4.5 stars out of 5. This was a hell of a matchup. When they say on commentary afterward, it's a match of the year contender, they ain't kidding. I think whether you classify it as cage match, women's match, whatever match, I think it's definitely one of the top matches of 2023 across all the major companies. I think Trish deserves a lot of credit for still being able to work and perform at this high level after all the years she spent in relative hiatus before coming back on this kind of like looser schedule, not full time. I think she's still able to hang and just prove why she is still as good as she is propped up to be in all the hype packages and everything. I thought that some of the spot calling was a little loud and noticeable at some points, but that's kind of oh well. But I will say I really enjoyed a lot of the different camera angles we saw showing kind of the top of the cage action as well. Come on everyone and put your hands together for the John Cena, who is the host of Payback and is introduced as the greatest of all time, which is certainly nice, and I think he's earned that claim. But there are a lot of people on the roster right now who are using some version of the phrase greatest of all time as part of their vernacular or their shtick or their gimmick, just in one company, not to speak of like other wrestlers across this great land of ours. At some point, is there going to be a tournament to decide who the greatest of the GOATs is? Cena puts over the last match and says he needs to make things special tonight by appointing himself as the special guest referee for the LA Knight Miz match. Miz comes out and doesn't care much for that idea. Also takes a shot at Cena for appearing as a merkin in the Barbie movie. Yeah, what a dork for being in one of the highest grossing movies of all time. Cena wants some advice from Miz on how to be a better host. These two do some really entertaining promo work going back and forth. These two do have a lot of chemistry here. Miz saying that John Cena is almost 50 years old, still dressing like a Teletubby. Cena reiterates that he will in fact be the guest referee in this next matchup. A massive pop and chant for Los Angeles Knight to start things off. A lot of shtick early on, but then the fight begins. Each man teases their respective finishers. Fighting on the outside at the announce table, Miz dropping Knight into the desk and takes over, throwing some of the yas back in the crowd's face. Fighting in the timekeeper's area, Miz takes a tumble and Knight leaps off the barricade. Cena's very even-handed as an efficient in this match, both competitors getting in his face at times as the match continues. At one point in the match, Corey Graves bringing up what The Miz has said about LA Knight, how he thinks that LA is a fad, and Corey says, like Furbies and Tamagotchis, surely there's got to be a more timely and relevant example of a cultural fad than what we had like a quarter of a century ago with Furbies and Tamagotchis. This match being given a ton of time and you can feel it. Nice spinning DDT type move by Knight out of the corner and a kick out. There's a roll up, Miz grabs the ropes but referee Cena catches it. Gets some near misses with Cena in the corner. Miz hits the skull crushing finale on Knight and somehow LA kicks out. LA comes back, hits the elbow drop, the blunt force trauma and the win. Then he gets the John Cena seal of approval on the stage. I'm going to give it 3.5 stars out of 5. I thought this was a well-done WWE style match. And when I say that, I don't mean to be derogatory. I'm just saying there is a certain type of matchup and a certain style of what you see in the matches. And I think that Miz and LA Knight constructed a really solid version of that. I think it was entertaining. I think Cena as the guest referee added some spice to this that I think improved it, because I think that their interactions, the wrestlers with Cena, really helped to tell the story. I think that I'd be having different feelings about this match, in particular how much time it got, if Cena was not part of it. You know, and we talk about giving matches time, and I think that's great, but sometimes it just feels like this story could have been told, I think, in about 5 fewer minutes. And getting the endorsement from John Cena at the end was great for LA Knight. You cannot tell me he is not getting pushed when he is winning, high-profile matches on pay-per-view or premium live event, what have you, and he's getting these moments on screen with someone they just labeled the greatest of all time. Like, is he going to win a championship? Who knows? But it's like he's definitely got the will of the people, and he's getting shown on television and in prominent spots. So yeah, I'd call that a push. Well, a few weeks ago, Rey Mysterio beat Austin Theory on SmackDown to become the new US champion. And so rematch is due here. Mysterio defending against Theory, who hopes to have a three-peat on this night. Mysterio coming out with the rest of the Latino World Order, or I guess on this night, the Pittsburgh World Order, but PWO, someone get G.I. Ho. Also, I've never understood, I know I'm not the first person to say this, but I've never quite understood why Rey Mysterio has inherited the LWO and is kind of like reclaiming it as his own. Considering it was in WCW, he was forced into the original version of the group against his will. But here, have more old Eddie Guerrero gimmicks, Rey. Oh man, Cinnamon Toast Crunch is back, guys. Theory gets the advantage after a couple of minutes, grabs Rey in a chin lock, just swings him around a couple of times. That was cool. Austin begins to rip at the mask of Mysterio. Rey fights back and hits a big moonsault, follows up with a slide out and the tornado DDT on the floor. Theory dodging the 619, catching him on his shoulders, hitting a big old spinny slam and a kick out. Rey goes to the splash, but he takes some knees. Austin gets him up for the A-Town down. Rey turns it into a roll-up, winning and retaining. I give this one 3 stars out of 5. I thought it was an okay match. Mysterio looking great. I think that in this spot that he's in, I think he's doing a good job. Theory is one of those guys where I feel they have done a lot of work in 2023 to undo the work they did kind of building up his mystique and his push in 2022. He's not the same guy as he was at the beginning of his, US title push, what have you. And I think that, not to say that I think he's washed out, far from it. If he's still very young in his career, tremendous upside. I'm sure that if you looked back at what people thought of like Randy Orton at this point, at the same point in his age and his career, people might, have some different feelings about him then as they do now about him. And I'm not saying that, Theory is Orton, but a lot of people do make those comparisons about, young prospect, and he's certainly very athletic, has all the tools, but as a character, especially in this last half year or so, it's just not clicking with me. Kathy Kelly backstage with Becky Lynch. What's next for the man? Before she can talk, though, in walks T-Strats, who wishes to remind Becky that she never was NXT Women's Champion back in the day. Becky telling Tiffany she might see her again soon. We go to a Pittsburgh Steel City street fight for the Undisputed Tag Team Championships as Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens defend against Priest and Balor of the Judgment Day. The fists are flying at the onset. I popped big for the "Put Akeem's hat on Kevin Owens" sign. Finn heals on the whole city by stomping on a terrible towel, but KO fights back. Sami diving onto the Judgment Day. KO tearing off his shirt to reveal the funker on his shirt underneath. Beautiful tribute. The fighting is moved to the arena floor in the crowd. Dominic Mysterio appears to help out his teammates. They dump the champs over a wall and they taunt for a minute. Then the camera pans to reveal Owens and Zayn emerging, now wearing Penguins jerseys and wielding hockey sticks. Dominic is chased away. I gotta say, it was a great moment and like a power-up for the baby faces to get that local heat. But like, if I were in a wrestling match and I was like sweating and bloody and hot, the last thing I would want to do is to put on a big bulky hockey jersey and then wrestle another like 10 minutes. Priest driving Sami through a bunch of chairs, Owen breaking up the pinfall by throwing a different chair, brawling back into the crowd, into the kickoff show set, Sami diving off the desk. Dominic comes back, but Kevin Owens dives off a balcony, threw him onto a table. I love that camera angle from below though, that was awesome. Back in the ring, Sami all by himself against Priest and Balor. Finn goes through a table, KO somehow back in the ring. Sami's got it won, but then JD for Judgment Day McDonough yoinks him out of the ring. The friend of Finn, Balor, makes the save, then gets broken in half on the announce table for his efforts. Rhea Ripley spears Owens through the barricade. Sami's got it won again, hits the haluva kick, but then Dom hits Sami with the Money in the Bank briefcase. Balor with the cover and the win. The Judgment Day steal the tag titles, and what a moment seeing the whole group on stage with all their gold. 4.5 stars out of 5 for me. This was another great matchup on this night. Another match of the year contender, I think. It was such a fun, entertaining matchup. A lot of great moments in there. I think that even in defeat, Owens and Zayn looked like badasses, ultimately done in by the numbers game. But you know, my theory, an additional reason is the reason they lost, because Kevin Owens kept wearing that hockey jersey. I will say it's a great send-off, a great swan song for that tag title reign, because it's got to be the most memorable thing they've done since winning it at WrestleMania. Like, it's hard to think. It's crazy to think about. Again, talk about someone who's lost a lot of steam, unfortunately, is Sami Zayn. Like, oh my God, all the work they did in building him up as this just like complete underdog character, this uber babyface you want to rally around. End of 2022, beginning of 23, WrestleMania, what a moment, then what do you do? And where do you go with these two? And once they were separate from the bloodline entirely, it was like, they're just guys again. And it sucks that that's how the reign was treated. But I think, again, the way they won the belts, the way they lost the belts, incredibly memorable matches in their own way. And boy, speaking of the bloodline, you know, WWE pivoting from them to the Judgment Day as like the top heel stable to beat was done with the quickness, because suddenly now, like, what a moment to see the Judgment Day with all those belts, considering how they were almost written off by a lot of people, myself included, this time last year. They're just on this complete other level now, and you know, some people might be sick of them, but I'm not yet. I think that they're just that perfect heel stable, and they all have different attributes, and they all work so well together with their individual chemistry, like with each other, and the different layers you get, the different combinations you get with them. I think it's a really well done stable, and I think them getting their due now, I think, is really cool. And hey, they're even replicating bloodline storylines by having this new satellite member that not everyone trusts. On we go to the Grayson Waller effect with special guest Cody Rhodes. Grayson starting things off being his smarmy and condescending self to the Codester. Cody's first words in response to this were fine speech. Like, damn, John Cena is already in the building, man. You want to cause heat? Cody kind of blows up the whole wrestling talk show trope and wants to, quote, subvert expectations by not doing any of that, and instead welcoming the newest member of the Raw roster, the previously quit main event Jey Uso. Thanks for coming, Cody. Just me, Us. Day one-ish. Just me, Us. Day one-ish. Hey, who's that guy? Oh, it's just me, Us. Grayson is not impressed, says that Jey was successful as a tag guy, but has done nothing as a singles wrestler, and says if anyone needs the rub, bam, super kick. So this is how we have welcomed Jey Uso back onto programming after his big lengthy, 2-week hiatus or whatever after quitting WWE. This is the way they keep him on programming and everything. I think that's fine for him to be separate from Roman Reigns and all that. They'll eventually, I would imagine, want to circle back to, Jimmy versus Jey at WrestleMania. This gives them that break and that time apart. I'm excited to see what they can do with Jey Uso as his own standalone singles guy. But man, Raw is a very stacked roster right now, and I think everyone's really busy doing their own things. I wonder where Jey Uso will fit in that at the moment. But be that as it may, I think the segment was like, It was there. Why Cody Rhodes was there, other than to give his own little kind of like weird babyface like magic rubbed onto Jay as if he needed it. I thought it was kind of weird. Semi-main event for the Women's World Championship as Rhea Ripley of the Judgment Day defends against Raquel Gonzalez. These two do have history at NXT as well, so it's cool to see them circle back years later when both have changed and grown so much as competitors. The story here is that Rhea has just been causing havoc in Raquel's life. She took out her leg and cost them the Women's Tag Team Championships. She injured Liv Morgan, taking her out of action, and so now you got Raquel looking for vengeance here. Ripley rocking the China-inspired gear tonight, by the way. A lot of posturing between the two of them, but Raquel seeming to have an advantage early on. Rhea comes back with a big old drop kick right to the mush, the first of many on this night. Rhea seems to be bleeding now herself for some reason. Gonzalez powers out of a front face lock, just hucks Rhea into the corner. Raquel making her comeback, going for what looks like an alley-oop, but it goes horribly wrong for a second. Rhea going for the leg and putting on the prism lock, but Raquel fights out of it. The ladies are swinging wildly. On the outside, Raquel picking up Rhea for the powerbomb, slamming her into the ring post, into the barricade, hucks her into the post again. Once again, here comes Dirty Dom. He's pulled into the ring and takes a running power slam for his troubles. Rhea taking advantage of the distraction, hits the Riptide to win and retain. 3 stars out of 5. I thought this was a good match, but there were times where I thought it dragged a little bit. And I'm not sure if that was just something that I felt based on what the crowd was giving me, because the crowd did feel its quietest all night during this matchup. I mean, but regardless of that, though, I still think it was a really strong showing for both these ladies. Like, to have this, great main event caliber matchup, a great showing for the women's division that doesn't involve, any of the horsewomen, for instance, or anything like that. I think it's always good when they're able to kind of elevate themselves in that regard. Oh my God, John Cena, what happened to you? He says he's now channeling his inner Lance Catamaran, doing backstage interviewing, does a little squat to give Finn Balor and Damian Priest some height as they celebrate all their recent successes. That look Cena gives into the camera at the end, though, is priceless. Main event time for the World Heavyweight Championship as Seth freaking Soreback Rollins defends against Shinsuke Nakamura. And that's been the big story here. Nakamura recently turned heel and attacked Seth and said that he kind of exposed the secret that Seth has been working with this back that's been injured for years at this point. And so now that's the big story, is how much longer Seth can maintain this pace as the fighting champion with this bad back, now a target slapped on him here. I gotta say, in the short time they've had to build Shinsuke up as a contender, I've really enjoyed the presentation of him. And as I was writing that note, we see this great badass pre-entrance video for Shinsuke, this anime sequence of Shinsuke narrating the demise of Seth and his wish to put him out of his misery by removing the burden of the world title. I love that. There's also the great Muda in the front row witnessing Shinsuke's first main event match on a PLE for the company. Rollins not showing much weakness early on as he hits multiple dives in the first few minutes. On the outside, though, Shinsuke grabs Seth, dumping him onto the announce desk and throwing him back first into the barricade. Shinsuke working over the back extensively, driving the knee down while Seth is draped over the apron. Seth with a nice top rope Hurricane Rana to give himself some space. Seth talking smack, shouting at Shinsuke while he beats on him, telling him not to bring up his family and make his wife worry. Shinsuke with an unnecessary roll backward before running forward and hitting a snap German off the ropes. A triangle hold that Seth has to dig down deep to fight out of. Trading strikes for a minute, Shinsuke hits what looks to be a top rope Michinoku driver, my word. Kinshasa to the back of the head, just stomping the holy heck out of the champion. Seth is able to hit the pedigree, and after some maneuvering, Seth hits the stomp and covers to win and retain the gold. 4 stars out of 5 I'm going to give this matchup here. I think this was a great main event level matchup. You got to wonder how much longer they can go with a storyline like this of the champion who's working chronically hurt. How long eventually will that go until the bottom falls out? We have seen a very similar storyline, and I will talk about that probably in my All Out review. But here with Seth Rollins, it's wondering when someone's going to take advantage of that. Maybe a certain Sonor with his Money in the Bank briefcase. We'll have to wait and see about that. I think, like I said, they've done a really good job building Shinsuke up in a short amount of time. The fact they're kind of carrying on this conflict, what we saw on Raw, makes you think it's going to keep going, and I hope they can keep that momentum going with Shinsuke and Seth going on to their inevitable next matchup. My grade for Payback 2023 is an A-. A really strong show here. I like the fact that some shows get fewer matches and those matches are given more time. It doesn't always work out for their benefit. I know we want matches generally, especially on pay-per-view, to be given ample time to tell the stories, and I think that's fine, but sometimes it makes the matches drag a bit when they have that obligation. But I think that still really solid matches. I mean, two awesome matches in the cage match and then the street fight. Rollins and Nakamura was a good main event as well. So yeah, no huge complaints about this show. And yeah, if you're sick of seeing Roman Reigns as dominating all the time, then you didn't have to worry about that because you had a pretty good show without Roman Reigns being involved in it at all. But those are just my thoughts, folks. What did you think of Payback? Where do you think Jey Uso will fit in the short and or long term on Raw as a newly found solo artist? I want to hear about it in the comment section below. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe to Wrestling with Regret and hit that bell icon to get all the notifications. Well, like I said, I am doing my best to catch up with the big shows that took place Labor Day weekend. Payback, I'm done with that now, and I'm going to get all out to you as soon as I possibly can. I will have some things to say about the CM Punk situation in that video as well, so stay tuned. But until then, I'm Brian Zayn, and I'll see you next time.